Penguin Random House Audio presents The Darker the Night, the Brighter the Stars, A Neuropsychologist's Odyssey Through Consciousness, by Paul Brox. Read for you by Simon Bubb.
For Sonia, a beautiful soul. All men think all men mortal, but themselves. Edward Young, Night Thoughts. Now he has departed from this strange world a little ahead of me. That signifies nothing. For those of us who believe in physics, the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. Albert Einstein, from a letter of condolence on the death of his friend, Michele Besso. Prologue. This wasn't my idea. Give the reader a lamp, they said, to lead them to the door. Pin a note to the door. Forewarn them it's a rambling ramshackle house they're about to enter. I was more inclined to let you find your own way in and leave you to it. But second thoughts. This is not a conventional book, and I think you should know what you're in for. What I hope you're about to listen to is a mix of memoir, neurological case stories, and reflections on life, death, and the mind. I've thrown some Greek myths into the pot, and sundry other tales, some true, some not. Fact sits alongside fiction. Science tangles with myth. The fictional elements are, for the most part, easily identified. I don't have an autonomous subpersonality capable of seducing women in fluent French, for example, and I have yet to celebrate my 150th birthday. The case stories are mostly drawn from my experiences in clinical neuropsychology. Names have been changed and other layers of disguise added to preserve patient anonymity. There are two exceptions to the anonymity rule. One is the story of Pat Martino, the jazz guitar virtuoso, whose remarkable recovery from a near-fatal brain hemorrhage has long been celebrated in jazz circles. The other is Carla McKinnon, filmmaker and sleep paralysis sufferer, whose short film about that strange condition, Devil in the Room, has been screened at festivals and medical conferences worldwide. As for the autobiographical stories, I have changed some names and one or two other inconsequential details, but they are otherwise as true as I could make them. A few minor liberties have been taken with the Greek myths, but really, that's what you're supposed to do. All stories, fact and fiction, hang loosely around two perennial questions. What are we, and how should we live? And throughout these pages, there is the echo of my wife's words in her dying days. You don't know how precious life is. You think you do, but you don't. The book will make most sense if you listen to the first chapters first and the last chapters last, but otherwise you should feel free to skip and roam. Some chapters interlink, others don't, at least not explicitly, but no doubt you will make connections I didn't plan and haven't seen. The brain is a pattern-detecting device. It finds shapes and designs and meanings all over the place. Ah, someone said, so it's a metaphor for the brain itself. The way the mind hangs together, she meant. Logic linked to magic, dreams, hopes, memories, broad vistas, blind alleys, and always a sense of rolling along, hour by hour, of heading somewhere, even if that somewhere, ultimately, is nowhere. Yes, I declared, you've hit the nail on the head, though, in truth, it had never occurred to me. There is no clear dividing line in the brain between inner imaginings and perceptions of the real, solid world out there. Reality and fantasy are built into the same neural circuits. I wanted my stories to reflect that fact because I believe it rests at the core of what it is to be human. That's why, as you find your way about this rambling, ramshackle house of a book, you will encounter almost as many gods, ghosts, and mythic beasts as real-life people. It's also why the neurological patients I have chosen to write about are so often people who inhabit the twilight zones of the mind. You will meet a man who believes he is dead, but can tell you the story of his life, and a woman whose life story has been erased. There's a young man whose left hand has a menacing life of its own, and an old man who doesn't know his left hand from his right, or indeed his hands from his feet, or his feet from his ears, and women plagued by foul-mouthed monsters of the dream world as they lie in their beds, wide awake but trapped in paralysis. Observe the flow of patients through the neuro wards and clinics closely enough and for long enough, and you will inevitably meet such people. Look into their disordered brains, and you will learn something of the infrastructure of the self, yours as well as theirs. Look into their eyes, too, and see your own fragility. So the lamp has led you to the door. Open it. Enter. Find your way along the gloomy hallway. Climb the stairs. At the top, there is a door, slightly ajar. See? Push, and the door will open into a sunlit room, forever sunlit, regardless of the depth of the night. Part 1. A Grief Observed. The sunlit room. Boof. The oxygen machine exhales. It goes all through the day, all through the night. My wife exhales, like a sigh of resignation. It's 6 in the evening, and she hasn't opened her eyes today, or spoken a word. This day, between her birthday and our wedding anniversary, is the day she dies. Yesterday the boys and I dabbed green tea on her lips, and she smiled. But not today. Another long sigh. Her final breath? Not yet. There's another, and another. And then, no more. The last is like the wash of a wave fading into sand. The oxygen machine is still breathing. I remove the wedding ring from my wife's dead finger and box it in my fist. The machine exhales. I exhale. It scarcely missed a breath, this ring. I turn off the oxygen machine. Kate lies bathed in evening sunlight, the flesh of her arms already beginning to bruise with draining blood. It was the autumnal equinox, September the 23rd. The sun had crossed the celestial equator, and our last summer was behind us. Perfect timing. She couldn't face another winter, she'd said. There was a full moon that night. I stood in the backyard. I took a slug of whiskey and I thought, what next? We had discussed what next a good deal that summer, knowing her death was imminent. You'll be fine, she'd say. I'm not worried about you. I had a lot going for me. It would be a release. And it won't be long now. Oh, that's all right then. But I'll tell you something. You don't know how precious life is. You think you do, but you don't. I couldn't argue with her. She was dying. What did I know? I look back on it now as a good summer, despite everything. Painful, penetratingly sad, but without despair, and shot through with extraordinary moments of joy. It vindicated our decision. Precisely 100 days before she died, we were sitting in another sunlit room at the hospital. A doctor was telling us that the cancer had spread beyond all hope of containment. How long? Kate asked, and ventured her own estimate. 6 months? But there was a pause before the doctor answered. Perhaps. The best he could offer, the last resort, was another course of chemotherapy, which, if it worked, would extend her life by a couple of months at best. It would be the kind of chemotherapy that made your hair and fingernails fall out and made you sick to your bones. We knew all about chemotherapy. And the chances of it working? 1 in 5. We didn't have to decide right there and then, the doctor said. The following week would do. But the disease was moving fast, and treatment, if that was the choice, could not be delayed much longer. We agreed on the drive home that it was not a decision to take on impulse. We would discuss it with Tom and Nat, our sons. We would weigh the pros.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?